I'd like to call the order of the meeting for the Mayor and City Council of the City of Taneytown workshop for the month of May, and also the public hearing for the 2018-19 budget, and ask Councilman Frazier to lead us in the pledge.
Right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. Just a few comments before we get started. You'll notice Henry's lost a lot of weight over the month.
He went there, didn't he?
All kidding aside, I'm sure most of you realize Henry's had a heart valve replaced last Friday and is recuperating, and Jim Wyprek is acting as the city manager in his absence. So that's why he's there tonight, in case you wondered. But that's where we are there. We have a lot on the agenda tonight, and I want to get right to it. The first item will be a review of the minutes, but before I get into that, I just want to remind everybody that we'll be holding a public hearing for the next year's budget, the fiscal year 18-19 budget. And if you come to speak on the budget, make sure that you offer comments that are constructive. This is not a question and answer session. In fact, anytime you come to speak, we're not here to answer specific questions tonight, but listen to your comments and suggestions and consider them. We'll be voting on the budget and its related ordinances on Monday night. So if you have any comments, make those during the public hearing session. There'll be an opportunity for public comment on non-agenda items, and then later in the agenda will be public comment on items that were on the agenda, and the same rules apply. We have 3 minutes to speak, and we limit your remarks to comments and suggestions rather than questions, and they require answers. The first item is to review the minutes of April the 8th and April the 9th, or April the 4th and April the 9th regular meetings. Does anyone have any additions or corrections to those minutes?
Yes, I would like to mention on the April 9th meeting, there should be some inclusion of about what happened under the minutes and the budget introduction. If you go to halfway down the page, it's a single page of minutes. We had talked about zero-based budgets. What we received in the review of the budget was last year's budget, and then we received the new requests, and we really didn't know what our fund balances were, or actually starting from zero and justifying the work in each department. So I ended up voting against this because we never got our questions answered. We asked questions in writing, submitted to all the council members, encouraged them to ask the staff to do this.
Councilman,
pardon me?
What additions or corrections would you like to
Well, I want to add a sentence here to explain this voting. It says we never got the questions answered about what happened to all the connection fees of $14,400 for all the new housing that's going in. We don't know the numbers on that, and we submitted those in writing to every council member. And so because we didn't use a zero-based budget analysis but just compared the old budget, we really didn't do the hard work of a budget review in the meetings we attended. So I want to add here the words that Frazier opposed because the questions were never answered about the connection fees.
Councilman, during the work session, that one was went over pretty thoroughly.
And that objected to the comparison of the old budget to the new budget as they presented the numbers. Okay. So I'd make that in the form of a motion to amend the minutes that are presented on Monday.
All right, well, you may do that.
Because I don't think anyone should have voted to introduce the budget till we got our questions answered about where's the money and where's that income.
All right. again, that was reviewed during the budget work session. It should have been pretty clear at that time. That was the time to define that issue. But nevertheless, anybody else have any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Nope.
No,
All
sir.
right, they'll be up for approval on Monday night. Next, we have a public hearing for the fiscal year 18-19 budget and the constant yield tax rate. Would anyone like to address or speak regarding the coming budget? And as you approach the platform, make sure you identify yourself by name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your presentation. So,
Catherine Adelaide, 9 Cortlandt Street. I agree with Councilman Frazier that it needs to be a zero-based budget, and for anybody in our listening audience that doesn't know what a zero-based budget is, it means that you start from zero every year and you look at all the programs and they have to be justified for each new period, as opposed to an incremental budget, which is, this is what we did last year and we're just going to keep adding on to it. In particular, this tends to be a Republican area. I think everybody up there is registered Republican. And even though it's not a nonpartisan election here, the Republican principle of budgeting and government is smaller government, less spending. So the balanced budget, the zero-based budget is more in line with that, rather than we're having the same issues in the county with just overspending. Secondly, the tax increase, again, raising taxes in general is not a Republican principle. I think most of you probably ran on a platform of not raising taxes, so I just asked you to think back to when you ran, what you promised the citizens to not raise taxes. And to, again, the method of dealing with that is the constant yield rate. And so I'm very much object as a citizen, whether it's a penny or a million pennies. It's the principle that counts. You ought to be keeping a constant yield rate. The citizens of this town have been through enough financially with the water issues, and this is just another goodwill area where you could keep the constant yield rate and establish a little more credibility and restore some of the faith, I think, in the public. Also, again, I'm not sure why the information on the water hookups. I remember when I ran for council last year, it was, we can't make any promises because we haven't seen that. Well, now it's been a year and you've seen it, and it appears to be having issues about getting that information. Also, the idea that when people, so my comment is that there should be questions, especially during a public hearing. At least let people ask the questions. If you choose not to answer them, it's understandable. Sometimes you might need to do a little research. But as a free speech person, I think you should be letting everybody ask their questions, at least putting out there, give people things to think about. I'm not fond of somebody ask a question here and I hear this response, well, you didn't do this and you didn't come to that and you didn't do this. That's just really not an effective way to lead. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of clarifications. We don't really have any programs. We're not the federal government or even the county government. We hire the police and fix the streets and plow the snow, and that's keep the water and sewer flowing, and that's about our function. So most of what we do is already predetermined. There's no kind of social programs or anything like that we need to look at as a zero-based budget.
Well, if you're going to respond,
Second item is the fact that the tax rate has remained the same for years, ever since I've been mayor and even before that. And the event that occurs that causes an increase in taxes is the fact that new people move into town. The assessments haven't gone up any appreciable amount. then extra revenue is designed by new residences who are using new services. So consequently, they should be able to pay, they should be paying for those services. So that's just two clarifications. Anyone else like to speak on the budget?
If you want to address that, Mr. Mayor, I
No,
don't
I
agree
don't
with
wanna-
what you said.
I don't want to have any
Why-
comment.
Why
on
can
that.
you make a speech when somebody speaks? And a
I
councilman
make
can make a
comments,
comment.
that's all. I just made a comment.
Well, I would like to make a comment before we go on to the next one. I agree with the testimony that I think it is a time to ask questions. If you can't speak on Monday night meetings, and Wednesday nights you only have 3 minutes to speak, when can a question be asked of the sitting elected officials in town?
Anytime over email.
All that you have to do is just
Or call.
submit your questions in writing to the city staff, and
Well,
we'll be...
that's very unfriendly. I don't understand why you've chosen to make rules like that makes it impossible for a citizen to come to these meetings and ask a question.
Councilman,
We have
Because
all
when you-
the
when you
all the
answer
people
que-
here
answer
that know the
questions-
answer to those questions.
When you answer technical questions off the cuff without proper background, you're bound to make a mistake, and we don't want to do that.
Well, the suggestion
Not in this
was that you
environment.
don't have to answer, but you could get those answers for a citizen. This ought to be a time Wednesday nights when
All
we
right,
have
if
a
anybody has any
discussion.
Mr.
questions,
Mayor.
if they'd like to write them down and submit them to the city staff, we'll have an answer for you.
So rude.
Sometime in the
Mr. Mayor,
So rude.
two very brief things. First of all, this is we're having a hearing about the tax rate. We're not getting into discussions about meetings. And second of all, there is no limit to the time that a citizen can ask any one of us questions outside of this building anywhere. They see me at the food store, they can ask me.
Why?
They can ask, why can they ask anywhere?
Why
Because that's
not
our
at
responsibility to answer questions anywhere they are. All right?
This is the Wednesday workshop.
We're here to do it, and we're here to do a job. Right now, this is their chance to comment, to speak. We're listening to them.
I don't agree
We're not
with that
engaging
policy.
with them, we're hearing them out. This is their right to be able to tell us what they think at this
And as a
meeting.
councilman, I want to
All
say I
right, enough-
disagree with that
Enough back and
policy.
forth, we're going to move on, we've got a full agenda tonight. Ma'am, would you like to identify yourself?
Rhonda Bean at 168 Grand. Comments from Robin Fraser on the budget hearing Wednesday, May 9th. I'm sorry I cannot attend the budget hearing tonight. I wondered why this was not on the first Wednesday of the month. I have been frustrating with the budget process this year. I tried to get answers to questions, and they were ruled that the citizens cannot ask questions at the workshop meetings. So I emailed the city manager and the mayor a couple of times. The answer was that they were too busy working on the budget. They never answered my questions. At the budget retreat, citizens again were not allowed to participate at all. No one could make a statement or ask a question. The county has always allowed pre-budget hearing meetings so the citizens can hear a summary and ask questions. How can a citizen make informed comments at a budget hearing if they cannot get answers to their questions, especially when the staff has decided that no information regarding the utility revenues from the new hookups can be discussed? They don't believe that they're relevant. They sure were relevant as an excuse during the last election not to cut the sewer rate by 50% because we did not know for sure about new hookups. Well, now a year later, you do, yet refuse to disclose this information to the public. Based on the information I can gather without having my questions answered, I am asking two things tonight. Let the people keep their money and let go of the constant yield this year, if only increase the Taneytown revenue by $75,000. Let's look for ways to cut the current budget proposal. I suggest the town allow the Carroll Media Center to do all video work. We just need to connect with them, and they do it remotely like in Mount Airy. They said the cost would be $500 per camera, and 2 cameras would be needed, and $500 for the labor to put the cameras in and make the connection. The fiber that was run was for that purpose. If the CMC does all the videotaping, Mr. Dennis's time will be freed up so that additional personnel will not be needed. The general fund has a healthy balance. Let the taxpayers keep their money. Number 2, I would like to suggest that you cut the sewer rates in half, even though I was not able to get any of the answers needed to prove how Councilman Fraser's suggestion to cut the sewer rate compared to the numbers the town treasurer so aptly put together. I feel confident the growth that is occurring can subside the shortfall until enough people are paying in to recover the cost. The town's numbers show $2 million, which would subsidize a shortfall for 6 years. That is with 25 hookups fees per year. Give your citizens relief, cut the sewer rate in half. If you're bold enough to serve the citizens in this way, at least reduce the rate another 5%. I know it's not an election year, but relief is still needed. Thank you for your considerations of these suggestions to benefit the citizens of Taneytown.
Thank you. Anyone else care to make any comments regarding the budget? All right, then, we'll move on into the reception of the delegation. We have the Souls with us that would like to discuss their possibility of annexation, I assume, Jim. That's great. Do you want to give us an intro on that?
Sure, we can set this up a little bit. The Sewell property, is most of you know, is the tree farm off of Harney Road. They are contiguous to the city. The property is on actually both sides of Harney Road. It is in our comprehensive plan in our growth area for suburban residential development, and the wooded area is on our comp plan as a conservation area or open space area. And the Sewells are interested in coming into town and would like to gauge interest of the mayor and council. The reason we're here before you this evening rather than starting with the Planning Commission is when we've had this scenario before, the Planning Commission was not comfortable really discussing properties outside of the city limit without some indication as to the appetite for annexation. So we wanted to start with this body and see if there was appetite to move forward and start having some more discussions.
Okay. I have a question. What's the size of that parcel?
It is over 100 acres, but I'll let the Sewells give you the details.
Okay, are they here tonight?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Lori Sewell, 3400 Harney Road. Thank you, Jim. And Ronnie and I are just, as Jim has said, interested in developing our farm for an age-restricted community, possibly including continuing care also, a facility like that. So I know with the success of Carol Vista, it's been nice to bring a very nice group of people into Taneytown, and I think another community like that would do the same thing. It's less impact on the water and the sewer and the traffic than a residential, and there's no impact on the school system being an age restricted. So we're only interested in age restricted unless we would go to continuing care or assisted living. So we hope that we could bring a beautiful community with beautiful amenities and be a real enhancement to this town, to our town. And we're asking for your consideration to think about that and see if we can just bring a nice development and be a real asset to this area. We've invited our planning consultant, Don Taylor, and he has some plans, just some possibilities to take a look at for what we're thinking about. So I'll let Don take it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. If I may, I have some graphics that might help explain.
An easel there if you care to use it.
Can I be recorded standing here? Okay. As Lori said, my name is Don Taylor. I'm an architect and planner out of Ellicott City. One of the primary assets, in my view, of this property is its natural beauty and its convenient location near adjacent to Taneytown. And the Sewell's desire to create an active adult community struck me. The zoning preferred for this is village center, and it's conducive to what we do a lot of, and that is new urbanism planning, neo-traditional planning, which is basically a recreation of the character of small town America, which is what we have right here. So it got me excited to be able to be involved in this to some degree. So the vision that's on this piece of paper, and just to orient you, this is Harney Road. This is the bulk of the farm, and there's an 11-acre parcel on the east side of Harney Road. It's also part of the farm. This is approximately 18 acres, which would be a conservancy. It's naturally wooded, so that would remain pretty much as it is. This is a stream bed, Harney Creek, and this is a lower elevation. The highest point on the farm is roughly up here, sits on a knoll. So the vision we had was to create a variety of housing styles, types, affordability in this community. I'm familiar with the other local community, the age-restricted, which seems to have a lot of sameness about it. The intent here is to create a variety from smallish single-family homes to larger single-family homes to villas, perhaps townhouses. And as Mrs. Sewell pointed out, there's a potential opportunity for assisted living, continuing care facilities. One of those opportunities may be this 11-acre parcel on the other side of the road, which tends not to be integrated with the community as a whole. So that's a potential that we might want to consider. Again, the vision is to retain the character of the countryside, the farm, and to offer as many amenities as we possibly can on this site. We have the potential of housing density of 400 to 500 units on this site. And with that, we'd be proposing probably a community clubhouse facility of 15 to 20,000 square feet with active and passive activities, indoor pool, outdoor pool, all of those nice features. But in addition to that, again, to carry on the character of the farm, one of the things that we've discussed is maintaining some activity that relates to outdoor use, and that is the farming character. And one of the opportunities may be to include a seasonal barn where we actually have livestock. We would create neighborhood gardens so that people that live here have activities to keep them busy and have fun doing it. So it's not just a place to go and retire, but it's a place to live. The intent is to maintain the character and scale of what's immediately around the area with small single-family homes off of Harney Road. There may be larger on the stream bed because of the vistas and views. That property may have more value, so the houses may be larger. Additionally, the houses on top of the hill, which have a beautiful view, could be larger homes. So there's a potential here of these homes being 1,500 square feet or thereabouts, up to maybe 3,000 square feet. So we want to be as broad a market as possible. We have higher density villas that could be introduced here. Again, which could vary in square footage and size. But again, the character of this is neo-traditional. There would be alleys. So when you drive down the street, you're not seeing garage doors, as you see in many neighborhoods nowadays. So the bulk of these would be alley-fed. The houses would be very close to the street. Again, bringing that old neighborhood feel back to the community so that we have some interaction, socialization of the people that live here. I don't want to take up too much time, but that's generally the concept that we see that's workable here. And the question obviously remains, is this something that the town would be interested in annexing and bringing into the community?
I have a question. Would you develop this as a condominium community or?
No, these would be decent. Again, these are images, just randomly selected, but the character of this, again, is very important to me. And the clubhouse, which obviously is the primary amenity and the most visual impact, again, I'm seeing the character of a barn structure and that sort of feel. And given the potential location, and if you're at all familiar with the farm now, the current residence is sitting on top of this ridge. And that's where we would see the clubhouse. It would be highly visible from Harney Road. It would be central to the community. It takes advantages of the best views, and it would draw people into the site. So that image is what you're seeing in this photograph of the barn sitting on the hill, so to speak. And these are other various types of housing that could be in this community. So is there anything else I can?
Questions, anyone?
How many units did you anticipate again?
Zoning, I think, permits somewhere between 4.4 to 5.5 per acre. There is, the farm's 125 acres total. So if we take out this small parcel over here, it's 90-some acres, and exclusive of this as well. We're down to, I figured maybe 500 units of thereabouts, potentially. Very early at this stage to determine the exact numbers.
Thank you.
Jim, do you have any comment on the project?
Well, while this hasn't been formally presented to the Planning Commission, they were briefed on the concept and were supportive overall of the concept of another active adult community. They particularly like the possibility of it being a continuing care sort of community as well. So it was, the idea was well received at the Planning Commission.
Anyone else? I mean, I guess, do you have any objections, I guess is what we probably could say.
Well, I don't think we've had enough time to digest before we start talking about objections or whatever.
That's probably the truth. Well, I appreciate the presentation. It's certainly interesting. Certainly, I like the general idea of what you're talking about here.
I guess what we would like for you to contemplate for Monday evening would be some direction for staff as to whether to continue talks and basically just to gauge whether there is any interest in pursuing an annexation. Certainly more details will be forthcoming, and obviously we would be talking about a major subdivision plan going before the Planning Commission to work out all the details and the density. And for those of you who haven't been involved in an annexation thus far, we of course will be talking about how we're going to serve the property with water and sewer, you know, what conditions the mayor and council would want to place on annexation. You may recall that with the Bean property that's a bit to the west of this, where the Easy Does It Bar and Grill, that property out there, and the adjacent parcel, that was annexed with the condition of being a specific type of community with a certain, you know, density limit. So those are things within your authority to consider when you talk about annexation. So we would develop an annexation agreement to spell out those terms and an annexation plan to spell out how we would serve the property.
But this is just the very first step.
Right, right. So those things would all be coming if there's interest in seeing something like this become part of the city.
All right.
So is there any way to get this kind of information that we've seen tonight or we've been told tonight in writing so that we can better study that?
We can put something together for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Very interesting.
Thank you.
All right, before I close the public hearing for the budget, I'll ask one more time. Does anyone want to make any comments regarding the budget? All right, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing for the budget. and the town constitute tax rate and its related ordinances. Now I'll open the floor up to public comment pertaining to non-agenda items.
Carl Ebal, Roberts Mill Road. I hate to interrupt the comedy show, but I have something very positive to say this evening for the town. The town didn't originate this. The town did put a lot of effort in helping with this, and that's the banners. I think you did a wonderful job. I've had a lot of comments from people, not just in Taneytown, but it's a very positive thing for change, and I thank you, and I know there'll be more help coming later in the year.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
We're proud of that, I think, as a council, too, so. I think it turned out very nice.
Marvin Flickinger, 80 Spalmer Street. Once been with, this evening we've been hit with Republican ideology. Accusing you folks of being all Republican. I don't know whether you are or not, I don't care. I'm independent. I'm independent
Well,
because one of the things
the point is that the council is nonpartisan.
I'm getting to that. I'm independent mainly because I got sick and tired of diehard Republicans and diehard Democrats. They've got the country in terrible shape. And I hope that's an nonpartisan group there. I hope Taneytown always keeps it that way. And I don't mind a little bit of liberalism mixed in with some conservatism. I'm benefiting from a little bit of liberalism. I'm getting a check each month.
Amen for that. That's the truth.
Catherine Adelaide, 9 Cortlandt Street. I meant to mention this before. I'm sorry that Henry's not here to hear my compliment, but last year at the public hearing, I inquired whether the budget was online. And I was very happy to see that it was this year. So all of the documents were online, and it seems, I think that was a first. So I do appreciate the effort to make it easier for busy citizens to access, especially budget issues. Didn't have time to do a lot of analysis, but I did notice it. So I did want to share that compliment. Also, I guess as my favorite, where is she? Democrat would say, there's no such thing as nonpartisan politics. Everybody has a set of values, and I have no objection if Democrats get elected. It's a free country. I just am here as a conservative Republican to remind conservative Republicans about what we traditionally have stood for, which is smaller government and lower taxes. So,
well, the fact that we are nonpartisan has served this town since its incorporation, so I'm very proud of that fact. So.
Well, it serves the liberals and the Democrats who don't want to know that you're there. So I don't think it serves the Republican values. That's just my opinion.
Hi, Rhonda Bean, 168 Grand. I just have a comment about that presentation where they initially were suggesting it was for seniors, and some of the homes were 15,000 to 3,000 square feet. I just found that a little large for
Well, again, we're,
elderly people. But
well, everybody
that was my comment.
has a choice to pick what house they want. But I know a lot of old people live in big houses. I'm one of them.
That's true.
It's just a matter of choice, I guess, right? That's what makes America great. Anyone else care to make a comment on a non-agenda item? All right, let's move on into the agenda then. Does any council member have any conflicts of interest tonight on any agenda item?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Great. For Monday night, we'll be looking at introducing Resolution 2018-5, Guidelines for Public Meeting public comment at meeting. That was in your packet. Anybody have any questions regarding that or comments?
I'm discouraged to see this come back onto the agenda. I don't think that I've asked for it. I don't know who's pushing this on the council. It's very important that we protect people's ability to come to these council meetings and get answers to questions and do the research and be able to have freedom of expression of the people who represent them. If you won't take any comments from anybody and you won't respond to any questions, then you don't represent the people. So I would like to move on Monday to table these restrictions that have come out of Gaithersburg. This kind of ridiculous rules have been made in the county commissioner's office. Big giant signs, "You're not welcome here anymore in government." And I don't want to see that come to our town. We have a wonderful little town, and the city council should be accessible to the people. And if people read through these requirements, they'd be stunned at how much these would stifle people's ability to come here. I know people won't set foot in the building because of the way they've been treated by the council, and I'd like to turn that around, and so that council is accessible, answer questions, we get to the bottom of what's going on in the town.
Anybody else have any comments?
I do have a question about number 8 on the list. It says, if any individual causes a disruption during any meeting or fails to comply with these guidelines or the instructions of the presiding officer, they will be asked to leave the meeting. So I guess, do we need to define that further to say that this also applies to periods of non-comment? Like a period where we're not receiving comments? Or does that in and of itself cover the meeting broadly?
Well, it's during any meeting, so it could be at any point if they continue to cause a disruption. And that's the point of this, is to allow us to do what we were elected to do without these conflicts, without these disruptions. Excuse me?
It's disgusting.
Okay, thank you. And I initially brought this up, and I have no problem saying in public that I'm the one that brought it up, and I have no issue that I brought it up, because what we're doing is telling people, we welcome your comments, but you cannot be disruptive to the proceedings here. It's a matter of respect from us to you, as well as from you to us. We were elected to this position for a reason, and that is to make these decisions. We welcome the comment to help us make those decisions. When it gets to the point of being disruptive, you're hindering progress. And that's what we've had for the past 3 years, is a hindrance of progress. This should have been done a long time ago.
All right, anyone else comment on 2018-05? All right, we have up for adoption the budget ordinance 01-2018, the tax rate 02-2018, the water and sewer rate 03-2018, and the capital budget 04-2018. All these are related. Anyone have any question on any particular one of those?
Yeah, I would start with this first one called Ordinance 01-2018, the operating budget. It really is a problem that the citizens of Taneytown should be very aware of. We did not sit down and look at department by department allocations. We discussed just the IT department at one meeting I attended. What was presented to us was the last year's budget and then compared it to this year's budget. This is not the way careful, fiscal, conservative, or responsible elected officials should conduct a budget operation. Our hearing was on in mid-February last year, but the hearing was pushed back, so there's no time here to ask questions. But the operating budget needs to be looked for, because I believe that there is room to not raise taxes this year by holding the constant yield rate, but we never conducted that. It makes the council either look recalcitrant or lazy, and why in the world wouldn't they allow us to go through these departments and try to make efficiencies where they can be made? Who's in favor of waste? I don't understand it.
Councilman, I seem to remember having a meeting that you were not present at where we delved into these things in great detail.
You're too busy arresting innocent people. I'm not going to come to the meeting where you have where I had a work conflict. You know I had a work conflict. I gave
So
you a
then
letter
your,
that I
so
had
wait,
worked.
so then your accusations of recalcitrance and laziness are unfounded because you made a decision, you had a choice to come, you chose not to
No,
because
I-
you had work.
Well, you're ignorant.
The rest, excuse me?
You're ignorant of the fact that a small
rest of us-
businessman sometimes
The
has a
rest of
conflict.
us were here, you were not here, so calling us recalcitrant or lazy
I
because
was present at the scheduled
we-
meeting, and you all adjourned it. You planned to adjourn it, and I had set aside that meeting to have
Yes, he
these
talked-
discussions.
That-
But you called that meeting off, and I
That's
can't,
enough.
and that's not fair to say that, and it's not accurate either.
That's not enough. That's not enough. Well, I mean, never mind.
It's not accurate. I have an excused absence of the meeting where I have a work conflict.
No one is attempting to detract from that, Councilman.
I thought
Your
you just
accusation, no, your accusation that we are recalcitrant and lazy in our handling of the budget is what we took issue with.
Well, I would just ask Mr. Mayor, why didn't we go over department by department number at
We
these
were all
meetings,
in
at these public meetings?
we were all in a budget workshop session, which you were included in, and all of these things were discussed at that time. And all the opportunity to ask any questions that you had with what you had before you was there for you to ask.
But the public, you learned tonight, was not
Everybody
invited
else
to come
seemed
to
to
those
have their
meetings,
questions
nor to
answered
speak at
properly.
those meetings.
But you apparently didn't, because you didn't ask any
But
questions.
Mr. Mayor, to be honest, the public was not allowed to speak at those meetings.
That's correct.
That's right. So it's a closed shop.
It's
That's
not
my
a closed
point.
shop. They were here to observe the meetings.
You
So that
can't
when
be
the time,
bothered with
so when the time came for the public hearing, they were given the knowledge from observing what was happening and then could ask their questions.
How many-
We have to, excuse me?
How many attended the rescheduled meeting that you all called?
I can't answer that question. I don't
None.
know. It was
All right,
advertised.
well, let's
it
move
was said.
on. No sense in just going back and forth. We know Councilman Frazier's off the mark here for some reason, and
It's just disgusting that you present an operating budget without reviewing these departments.
but you see, we have done that. And that's the thing that, I don't understand why you keep saying that over again.
The only one was discussed while we were at these meetings was the IT department, whether we need additional staff for there. We did have a detailed discussion. This should be done for each of the departments.
Councilman, we went through line by line on the budget, and everybody had an opportunity to ask a question on every line in the budget. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they understood it, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they needed clarification, sometimes they didn't.
It's really humorous.
That's what the budget workshop is for. That's why we did it.
I think it's easy to find
Well-
Anyone else have any
$75,000
questions on any
not
of
have to
the?
raise taxes.
Well, Mr. Mayor, as an example, when we had our workshop on this budget, and I brought forward ideas and suggestions on ways to make sure the money here was accurate, see if there's a way to improve how we use the money, and that was after spending 25 or 30 hours at home going through this to make sure money was correct. If you had those same sorts of questions, that was the opportunity to bring it up. But you cannot blame us if you failed to take the time to go line by line and ask the appropriate questions.
That assumes I didn't do that. The fact is that when you review this, you can't get a second to make any changes to it. There's not a
Right.
person on the council who will do anything that I suggest.
That's incorrect.
Well, we'll move on to Resolution 2018-06 if there's no further comments on the budget from anyone else. All right, Resolution 2018-06, water allocation for May. Anybody have any questions on that?
Nope.
No, sir.
All right. City Manager's report. I don't, I mean, you see Henry's standard City Manager's report in the folder. I called Henry before I came over tonight to see if he had anything that he'd like to add. He didn't. But Jim, maybe you have some comments you'd like to make.
I do. We have a couple things to talk about, nothing pertaining to Henry's written report. But we do have an item, and I'd like to add this for Monday night's agenda. At the treatment plant, we are running low on magnetite, which is basically the substance that makes our ENR treatment function. And to fill the silo out there, and underneath your budget tonight was a quote from Evoqua, is $13,750, so it's over the $10,000 that the city manager can authorize without mayor and council approval.
That wouldn't be a problem.
So we'll be looking for approval to do that. Obviously, we need the material to keep the plant functioning properly and meet our nutrient reduction goals. So that will be on for Monday night to authorize that purchase. And
Jim, out of curiosity, how long does, an order of this last? I mean, generally, because I know it's not going to be exactly the same every time.
we have been going through it more quickly than projected when we started the ENR system up. It was projected that we would purchase it less than once a year, and it looks like we're going to be purchasing it more frequently. It's going to be driven largely by rain events and you know how much the volume at the plant. But on the positive side, while the cost of that is looking like it's going to be more than originally projected when the plant was engineered, the state does have opportunity for us to apply for reimbursement of operation and maintenance costs for the plant, but in order to do that, we have to be compliant with our permit. This will be our first full year of operation with the ENR system, and last year we also did have some equipment failure issues, but we still have submitted for a partial reimbursement for the portion of the year that the ENR was up and running. So it's possible that we may be getting some of that money back from MDE, and that's something that Kevin Smeek, our Public Works Director, is monitoring. And as I said, so far we're on target to be able to apply for reimbursement for this year.
So Jim, this is the delivered price?
Yes.
25 tons, I imagine, would cost quite a bit to deliver, so.
Yes, and it's basically a sole source. The ENR operation is essentially a turnkey operation from Evoqua, so it is sole source. They come out with a truck, they blow the material into a silo that's on site, and essentially that's the process. We don't buy half a silo. They send the truck out to fill the silo, and that's basically.
And there's no competitive brand that we should compare.
Right. This is all right. The whole technology is Evoqua.
Okay, we gotta have the sewer plant working, don't we?
And also, wanted to call your attention to in the Parks and Rec Director's report that mowing bids were opened, and his recommendation is in your packet. There were 2 bids received, and please have a look at that, and we're going to have that ask for your decision on that Monday evening.
Anybody have any questions on anything Jim has commented on, particularly the mowing bid or the Magnite, whatever it is?
Magnetite?
Yes.
Stuff they use in the sewer plant. All right, that's fine.
Well done.
Any questions on any other departmental reports? Okay, how about the legal report? Jay, what do you have for us?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we had a busy month dealing with a lot of development issues, and most of them, all of them are positive. Meadowbrook Section 5 has been recorded. The Public Works Agreement has been delivered. The letter of credit that we talked about is in transit, so they are ready to proceed in building and grading and doing all the things to put some more lots on the ground. As you recall, the Meadowbrook Section 5 is going to be broken into 2 phases, although all of the phases are being recorded at once. So they're going to be built in 2 phases, but they're all recorded for our purposes at once. And so that's a wonderful thing to have more lots available to keep the building going up there, and that's the plan with that. So the engine keeps grinding forward. Then their neighbor Meads Crossing finally has gotten their crews back on site and started basically the crux, the core of their building out there. They've started with their stream crossing, and the city was involved in hiring a third-party inspector. So we basically have hired the firm of RK&K, which are the same people that did the inspection for our wastewater treatment plant. They work for the city, and they're out there making sure that the work that's being done is in compliance with the plans. And then, of course, their costs that they bill the city are reimbursed by the developer. So that's all part of the public works agreement situation. But that's a positive thing as well, because they intend to have lots on the ground to be built upon by the end of the summer. So that'll keep that moving ahead. So those are the future projects, and now we have a one-of-a-kind thing we haven't done yet before, and that deals with Meadowbrook Section 4A. We are finally completed with Section 4A as far as the infrastructure and things like that, and it is now ready for acceptance. And the unique thing about this is the fact that we haven't ever done an acceptance of public infrastructure and had any process in place probably for the last 17 years. Carroll Vista was private. Creekside has not yet dedicated theirs to us. So we were coming along with how do we want to make this happen, and Dick Hall has been great in working with this. So I'll back you up to last fall. You remember he asked council's permission to pave the roads in the fall so that they could overwinter, and then he could do any punch list items. At that point in time, we agreed that winter ended on April 15th, and after April 15th, we would do an inspection. So the Public Works Department went out, did the inspection, found some punch list items that needed to be fixed. None of them with the road, by the way. They were dealing with sunken electrical boxes and raised electrical boxes. So keep that in mind when we have paving issues in the future. So they found about 4 or 5 items, a street light that had to be replaced and things like that. Those were taken care of, so the Public Works Department said that all of the infrastructure that is there in Section 4A is ready to be taken over by the city. They had previously televised the sewer lines last fall, so we didn't need to do that again. And so everything was done. The next piece of that is all paperwork, where the developer asks for the letter of credit that we're holding, which is basically the retainage, the 10% over the amount that he's been paying out, asks for that letter of credit to be released. And in its place, he gives us a new letter of credit that has a longer term, a 2-year term, for basically the same amount of money, more or less, which is broken down in his public works agreement about what it's bonded and what it's for. These are for maintenance items. So it's not to complete things because they're already done. It's in the event we have a problem, something breaks, something isn't right when the warranty, this money is our surety to say, yeah, we're going to go get it. So what you have before you in new business tonight is acceptance of Meadowbrook Section 4A. On Monday, you would be asked to take a vote to say, yes, we accept that. And then number 5 is release of the 4A letter of credit, because we have to give that up before we get the other one back. And the thing that never happens is, because nobody likes this, it's not the glamorous part, is following up with the paperwork to actually get the deeds for the roads and the deeds for the easements. How many times do we go back to developments and say, oh, they never got the deeds? So these deeds have been prepared, they've been reviewed by the city, and once you agree to do it, then they'll be given to the developer to sign. The mayor will sign that we're accepting them, and they'll be recorded, and that's going to be the general process of how we'll move forward for this type of thing. So there's no reason not to accept it unless there's something we've been missing, but the staff side of everything is done. So we can ask questions when you get to that, but I don't need to talk about it under new business then, so you've already set that up. And the last item is a housekeeping item that we talked about last month, and I told you to kind of think about. It's the upcoming meeting schedule. As you're aware, our work session for June is scheduled for D-Day, June 6th. And then our normal business meeting would be Monday, June 11th. However, you will not have a quorum to have the meeting because on June 11th, it is the Maryland Municipal League Conference. So you won't have enough people to have your meeting. So that presents your first issue of how you're going to deal with June's meetings. And then you might as well look at it in its totality. When you get to July's meetings, the work session night is July 4th. And so I'm sure you're not going to be here for July 4th. And then that would mean the business meeting is on July 9th. So on Monday night, you need to decide how we're going to do the meeting schedule so that we can advertise and deal with that. The proposal, well, it's not a proposal, but some options are, You have your meeting in June, your work session meeting, which would be June 6th, and you can call it a work session / business meeting. That is your meeting for the month. There won't be two, meaning that whatever's on the agenda you'll discuss. If you need to take action, you can take action that night. If you decide you don't want to take action, then it just gets postponed to a later meeting. So it's one meeting and done in June. And then in July, since you don't have a work session, you could do the same thing on July 9th, meaning have one meeting where it is, you call it work session, business session, but you'd take votes on that. The only issue with the July meeting is the fact that July 4th is a holiday. Even though the city's open on the 5th and 6th, people are taking annual leave. So it might be very difficult to get the agenda packages together. I mean, if you want to have your meeting on July 9th, I'm sure the staff will make it happen. But there was also a suggestion when we talked about this before about just saying you're on summer recess, like lots of other towns do, and you won't have a meeting in July, and you'll pick it up with the new schedule in August. So those are some things, or you could come up with other meeting dates where you'd want to meet and do things like that. But on Monday night, we probably need to make that determination.
Are you looking for comments now about that?
I mean, it's just among you all how you
The
want
one
to
that you proffered seems pretty reasonable to me. It's pretty, once we enact all these things on Monday, it would be a pretty slow agenda for those months. Don't you agree?
Yes, that's the thought that, I personally thought that if you have your meeting in June, that would be your last meeting of the fiscal year, and the staff has the ability to either put stuff on the agenda or not. You could not have your meeting in July. It's the first meeting of the new year anyway, and just start in August, and you know that in August we'll be conducting business. There really isn't anything that's pending that needs to be done. We can, but that's why I'm asking for 2 months in advance, because if we're not going to meet in July, we need to make the water resolution so it carries off for 2 months. So we kind of need to know how you're going to balance it. But I did, at one of the last meetings when we just kind of informally talked about it, ran that idea by everybody, and there's no problem with the charter. There's no problem legally as long as you decide and vote what you want to do. So.
Great.
All right, folks, anybody have any other good ideas? Well, we'll entertain a motion to do something on Monday night. What else, Jay?
Nothing else, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else for Mr. Gullo?
No, sir.
All right, move into old business. There's a couple items of old business that I requested to be put on the agenda. The first item is simply a continuation of a discussion we had during the business session about this IT person. There seemed to be, there was a suggestion made by Councilman Wance that IT person be focused on social media and such, rather than being just a number 2 IT guy and general purpose IT guy. And there was some interest in that idea, and I guess reason I have it on here, if we still have that feeling, I would like to probably establish a committee of 3 that would meet and hash this out and come back to the council for a recommendation. If there is no problem with what is proposed, that is adding a second IT person as an assistant, then we don't have to have a committee or just move forward. So I guess the only reason I'm bringing it up is because there was some talk last month that we might want to look at a different tact for this position as to what was than what was proposed. So.
May I say a word there? I thought that Councilman Wance did a good job of explaining how this position has been burdened with some tasks that would be better perhaps done by looking at department distribution of those tasks. I think that the need for the additional position would be alleviated largely if that review occurred, because when we reviewed the things that were being done, I could put some of them under different department heads in a way that would bring efficiencies, and I think also would lighten the burden for the able job done by Mr. Dennis. So I think that idea of increasing IT, I think it should remain, that is the name of the position. It should remain focused on those sorts of duties and not a plethora of other catch-all things. That's the way I viewed it. After we discussed it, I thought Councilman Wance's ideas were similar and very positive in that area, and I'd like the council to consider them before they move forward with that position on Monday, perhaps.
Well, recall, we have funded this position in the budget. We just haven't, we don't know what the complexion of that position is going to be yet. So, anyone else have any comments or thoughts?
I guess,
You go first.
I guess a little clarification from Councilman Frazier, because I was a little confused. You said that by disseminating certain activities, you said that there would be the possibility of eliminating or alleviating the need for a specific position or a second position. But then in your following statements, you affirmed that you think a second position is a good idea.
No, I don't believe I said that. But just like to clarify, I'm sorry you're confused about that. The suggestion was that additional duties would be consolidated under the IT authority, and a second position was needed. I do not believe it is needed when reviewing the individual tasks that we reviewed. And I'll just go back on what Councilman Wance discussed, some of the things that you discussed. I thought they were very appropriate. These duties don't have to come under the town manager through the IT department, but could be put under other departments, alleviating the need for this additional position. I'm in favor of saving that money. That's enough to not raise taxes this year.
Well, again, we've approved the position.
I know
We
it's in the
don't know
budget.
what
I'm going to have to vote
position
against
we've
it.
approved. That's the clarification. It's not to whether we eliminate the position or not eliminate the position.
How could you have said that I
You
was
as
in
a
favor of
council
it?
approve the position. What we have to do is determine what that position will do. And that's the question that I have before you. So if everybody says the idea that was suggested as far as an IT person, assistant IT person is fine with me, then we don't need to do anything. But if we say, I'd like to talk about that a little bit more, then we probably need to get together and talk about it a little bit.
Well, and that's it. I think unfortunately I was late and didn't get to hear the gist of the conversation that you guys had. My only thought would be, I don't understand why we have to create a whole new position. I guess to me that's almost like adding another chief to the mix when it could just be stuck all under one title. I didn't get to.
So you like it the way that it was proposed originally?
I do, only for the simple fact that, you know, a lot of the things that bog him down are not necessarily something to me that requires a full-time position, but I like the idea of having two people sharing duties to a certain extent and being directed as needed instead of just saying, okay, well, this is your job, this is my job. If he still gets overwhelmed with something, does that then mean this guy doesn't touch it? It just, to me, having two people kind of, I don't know. I guess, and
That's a
like,
good
I
comment.
missed the conversation, so I don't understand why we have to create a whole new area.
May I speak to that, Mr. Mayor?
Maybe you should just bring Councilwoman Fuller up to date on what your thoughts were.
Okay. So the idea behind the position, which I think I had referred to as a communications coordinator,
Right.
is going more towards departmentalizing the city. You have people focused on their tasks instead of having multiple people with the same tasks. And one of the biggest emphasis on it is looking at what's important this day and age, which is how information gets to the public through social media, through the videos, through the signs and all of those things. And having somebody with experience and dedication to that gets the information out more reliably and more consistently. And I think when you start muddying that up with all those other things, and all of a sudden you have two IT people who are both too busy with everything else in IT, that these important things that are lacking significantly in the city are still going to be less than ideal.
Well, and that's it. I guess, to me, and I get what you're saying, but this stuff, and I don't have the list with me, were things that to me were just not a full-time thing. This is stuff that teenage kids do daily for fun. I mean, it's putting stuff on Facebook and Twitter and, you know, stuff like that. So why not utilize him in other areas as well? But then that just falls under IT. So I guess we're kind of
Well, you can't
sticking
compare,
ourselves into a.
no, you can't compare this to
Well, I
what
kinda
teenagers
can,
do.
because I think they're really good at it.
Right,
first
well,
of all.
teenagers report what they ate for lunch.
I know, and that's what I'm
What-
saying. They're really good at it, and they do it
Right.
regularly. But why should we only, you know,
Because there is
stick it in
a,
this one category?
because there is an importance to this information being put out to the public in the right
Except for that
way.
we only have a limited amount of information regularly.
No, there's a lot of information that should be put out that's not.
But isn't it? Because I can find it. I think it's a matter of we're not shoving
can
it
find
down
it.
people's throats.
Right, you can find it, but it's not out there for engagement.
So you want to hire somebody who makes big signs and hangs them all over town? I guess I don't understand what you expect them to do in addition to, you know, putting stuff on the website that we do already, or making sure that stuff is available, which it is.
In a
Just that
timely
other
manner.
people do.
In a timely manner.
Well, and again, you know, I
mean,
guess
there's
I
an
just
entire-
don't understand making a whole new.
I mean, there's an entire career dedicated to exactly what we're talking about.
sure there
And it's
is,
not
but-
what teenagers do.
Well,
Well,
and again, that's where I guess I don't understand why we can't just leave it the way it was under an IT heading. If you want to give him those job descriptions and those jobs to do, you know, that's fine. But, you know, why are we the ones telling Dan, I guess, what he needs help with or what he should pass his, I mean, he's been doing
Well,
a great
because we're the
job.
city council, that's why.
No, you're right, we are. But
Because
we don't run the daily,
we determine how resources should be used and how money should be
well,
used.
sure, and to me, this is gonna be requiring more than what a secondary position would. But again, you know,
So can I ask, and, you know, both of you make excellent points, and I guess my question is, you know, in keeping with what Councilwoman Fuller has spoken about, the list of job areas that would fall under the potential communications coordinator, why could they not also be done under the new information technology position? Like when we go out to hire somebody, we explain to them that part of your job is going to be handling social media in addition to helping out with IT. That way, that takes that particular aspect away from Dan, which still alleviates him, but it falls under that information technology position that would be created.
Because you still won't have somebody focused on it. You have somebody that will be pulled off of those projects to take IT things on. There is a certain amount of focus that should be put into this to make sure that people are engaged in the city, to make sure that information is out there, is accurate, and that we can increase our presence online, through the digital sign down at the park, regarding the YouTube videos that are put out. All of those things do require time and someone dedicated to them to make sure that it's effective and beneficial to the citizens. If you make them share, something will be sacrificed.
one thing, I'll just add my 2 cents. I don't get to vote, but I'll just add my 2 cents. You all know that I wasn't too much in favor of this position to begin with. In fact, I suggested it be a part-time position, if anything. But in your wisdom, you decided that a new position. I respect that. I just have a hard time adding stay if any place, but sometimes I need to look beyond what my Scotch ancestry tells me to look on beyond, I guess. Anyway, the idea of a separate position, the biggest advantage I see would be that you'd be able to have more accountability for that individual. That he'd be able to be measured more succinctly than he would if he were someone's assistant, I guess is what it would be my biggest argument for it. But the question is that I'm not convinced of, do we need it? Why don't we leave it at this? Let's think about it over the weekend, and if somebody wants to make a motion, we'll make a motion, and if they don't, we won't. It'll move forward as proposed.
If I could just add, I believe the IT specialist provided a breakdown of hours spent in a typical month. And I'm trying to get up to speed on this because I haven't been privy to some of the conversations between Dan and Henry. But my understanding just from work that what I've looked into so far is that taking the social media and communications aspect out from Dan's job doesn't reduce the workload to the point that some additional IT help is not needed. I think if you take time to review those hours spent on the different IT functions, not that the communications position does not have merit, but as Councilman Wan said, that what we're doing now could be greatly expanded on to turn that into a full-time position. But that doesn't address the need for somebody with the IT skills to assist Dan. And just to jump on the idea of having more than one person able to do this IT stuff, Dan was out sick for a few days. The day he got back, our server was down, and it took him the majority of the day to get that back up and running. We have one person in the organization that knows how to do that. If that server had gone down while he was out with the flu, we certainly would have been scrambling to try to figure out how to fix it, but I'm not sure what our options would have been. We did what we could to keep working and keep things flowing, but with so much of our day based on online systems that we need the internet for, and not to mention the shared drive here at the city, we were really limited as to what we could accomplish that day. And if that had been a day that he was out sick, there's nobody to fix it. So just something to keep in mind.
Okay, well, we'll
Thank you, Jim.
discuss that a little further. The next two items under old business are really old business. At least 35 years, maybe not 35, 25 years. I won't go back all the way to the beginning, but we've been talking about Bollinger Park and more recently a gazebo, or we've been talking about a band shell, I guess, that long. These are two items that we had in our budget for this year, 17-18 budget. And we underfunded them. We have estimates in your packet of what it would really cost. I'm not sure that I agree with the estimates, but I'm not here to debate that. What we have to do before the end of the year is to authorize funding or to extend these funds into the next year budget. So if these funds are available through the park reserve fund. It's not money we've got to take out of anything else. It's money that we have available we should spend. We've been talking about this, we've been promising this to the citizens for many years, and I think it's time we give back. The recession's over, it's time to give the citizens back something that they can enhance their park system with. So that's my recommendation, that we vote to fund those on Monday night, and that's what I'll ask. Anybody have any questions or comments on that?
Mr. Here, that's right.
All right, let's move into new business, the financial report. Anybody have any questions on the
Mr. Mayor,
report? Yes.
did you want to talk about the gazebo?
Well,
We just did.
That was
That's
part-
included? Okay.
I was including that. Same comment.
I thought you maybe wanted to talk about it specifically.
No, just the same comments. The gazebo portion of this is small compared to the Bollinger Park portion, but then again, I'm not sure what $50,000 is to remove non-native species on that bid. I got to get that clarified.
You noticed that.
So anyway, how about monthly financial report? Anybody have any questions on the monthly financial report?
No, sir. No,
All right, we'll be approving that. Accounts payable, these are the accounts that, with the checks we've written this month. Anybody any question on those?
No, sir.
All right, number 3 is donation to the fire company, and we give the fire company a donation each year, and we've asked Jim Parker to come for the last 2 meetings, and we still haven't got a check. But but if he comes back Monday, I promise we'll have a check. And that's what that's for. And then the last 2 items were the acceptance of Meadowbrook and the release of the letter of credit, section 4A. Anybody have any comments on any of those items?
It sounds like the staff has it all well under control.
Good job.
Again, it's important to, I try to stay in touch with Henry every day, and I try to stay in touch with Jim every day, so I think we'll be all right. The prognosis, as far as Henry's return, is 4 to 8 weeks, which is kind of open. I mean, 4 weeks isn't so bad, 8 weeks is kind of tough, so hopefully it'll be closer to 4 than later than late, but I'm sure we'll be in good hands. I mean, Henry's at home. He's talks to you. I mean, he's coherent. I mean, no issue that way. He's just a little bit of pain. So, but
Yeah, we'll keep Henry in our prayers, and I know we have faith in the assistant city manager.
yes, indeed. All right, now I'll entertain some public comment pertaining to items that have appeared on the agenda. Does anyone like to speak on anything that's appeared on the agenda?
Marvin Flickinger again. I want to ask you a question. I know you can't answer it, but it's in the form of a statement. Look at it that way. In your Monday night's meeting, I'm not sure of the regulations. Can any one of you bring up a subject and have it voted on that same night, which would be without public comment?
Can I speak to that?
I'm not
Is that all right,
asking
Mr.
for
Mayor?
an answer, just a statement.
His
If you can do that, I would suggest maybe you would make a regulation that you couldn't vote on anything on a Monday night unless it went through a Wednesday night meeting.
Well, the purpose of the agenda is to discuss the items at the meeting. So items that wouldn't be on the agenda would probably be, I could rule out of order. And we could come back and put them on a future agenda and then prepare our,
Because if you could
that's
do
what you're
that,
asking. So
somebody could bring something up and have it voted on and pass, and it might have an adverse effect on somebody out there that you may not be aware of.
well, but again, what would typically happen if it were an item that had some ramifications, I would probably rule that motion out of order because it didn't appear on the agenda. If any, I have the ultimate responsibility for the agenda. The counselor and the city manager also have input, and we plan these agendas in advance to make sure that we try to cover as much topics as we can. Often I'll have citizens or council people or somebody come to me and say, "Hey, can we include this on the agenda?" And I'll put it there. If the agenda's too full, I'll say, no, we got to wait till next month to do it. But somebody just simply, I make a motion that we paint the front door green, I might say let's rule that out of order. We need to discuss that a little bit more, something like that. So we probably got it covered. Any other comments?
Catherine Adelaide, 9 Cortlandt Street. I'm going to have to talk fast this time. Regarding the budget, I just want to clarify whether it's programs or departments, it's still relevant to a zero-based budget. And regardless of why Mr. Frazier, Councilman Frazier, anyone didn't make it to any of the meetings, still, whether it was an incremental budget or a zero-based budget, I guess there's no point in asking that question. The question is it justified? So even if you went through it line by line and it was an incremental budget, I don't think it addressed Councilman Frazier or my concern about doing a zero-based budget. And again, I've said it before, I don't think it's helpful to play, you weren't here and you didn't do this. And as a council, I would be more grateful for every input that citizens are making. I have no problem with people who disagree with me. I'm glad more people show up. So I just would like to see the council be acknowledging all efforts instead of, well, you didn't do this and you weren't here for that. People really scrape to just get here at all. And a lot of people just don't make it. They're just too busy. At the workshop, at a budget workshop where nobody can ask questions, again, I think that's just really defeats the purpose, especially not everybody's, this could be pretty intimidating for people, so I think there should be questions. Moving along, the Sewell Annex, I had just asked her why she had wanted an annex and couldn't do what she wanted to do privately, and she said because of the water, the well and septic, they would have to have, you probably knew this, but I just, for people listening, if they were wondering why they came before to annex, it's to access the city water and sewer system. Just information. In terms of these guidelines, I don't see why any speaker needs to state their name and address. A person should be able to make a public comment. Somebody coming through Taneytown, walking off the street who sees that should be able to come up here, doesn't live here. You don't need to know their name and address. I think that's over restrictive. I'm sort of like, what are you afraid of? For me, I just want to hear your comment. The reason I get suspicious of state their name and address is that it could be used as retaliation when people say things that you don't like. So I think it's just encourages more free speech to just let people make their comments. On the second item, that I think is really good that they can complete their sentence. At the candidate forum, they had a rule that if you went over, we were cutting you off. Now, actually, they didn't. But in terms of all the civility that we're all talking about, I do like that the speaker shall complete their sentence. I think that's a good addition to that. On number 3, the word ethical, I don't know. Oh, that's it.
Thank you, Catherine. Anyone else care to make any comments on the items on the agenda?
We're at our last item on the agenda, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to say that I thought when we reviewed the adoption of ordinances that we would mention each one. We only talked about the operating budget, but we are actually enacting a tax rate and a water and sewer rate and a capital budget. These are 4 different votes on one.
That's correct.
I wanted to say, didn't get a chance to comment on
When I
that.
introduced the discussion, I asked any comments on any one of those
That's not how I recall it.
budget-related ordinances.
Okay.
And the only comments that came from were on ordinance 01.
I just wanted to say before we adjourn that I thought it was cynical to lower the tax, the water and sewer rate in election year, but not consider the vast amount of increase of revenue we had from all these new houses and proposal to lower these rates would be in order on Monday.
Didn't you mention this like the first thing that came out of your mouth tonight?
I don't think so. I just think it would be in order with the new revenues to be able to give some relief in that area.
And Councilman is...
I mentioned it because I'm going to make a motion to do it on Monday, and like Mr.
You can do that.
That's good. We should mention something we do on Wednesday, so it could be not out of
Have
order
that
on Monday.
power, Councilman, to make that motion.
Councilman,
Thank you
and
so much.
it should be mentioned that the unexpected revenue that we receive from new growth is going to be put into things that the city needs that were relating to capital projects. That way we don't have to raise water and sewer rates. They're staying the same this year.
We're going to vote to spend almost $14,000 for stuff to put in a silo to treat the sewer plant.
Yep, well, I'm going to vote for that.
And it makes sense to lower the sewer bill?
Okay, thank you for tonight. I'd make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Are you seconding or you're
Second.
asking?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you.
You need to have a
Thank
second.
you.